I'm Guruprasad from Bangalore. I work for Canonical, the company that makes Ubuntu, and I work in the Launchpad team. And my talk is about some aspects of Launchpad. So just to get a sense of the audience and the level of familiarity with Launchpad, uh, can you all tell me whether you know Launchpad or how many of you know what Launchpad is? Quite a few. Uh, in this case, even though you don't know enough about Launchpad, you'd still have some takeaways. I hope I'm in the stock. Yeah. Uh, a quick introduction. So I work as an engineering manager in the Launchpad team. You can see my Launchpad user ID, and I've been a pre and open source software enthusiast since 2007 when I got introduced to Linux, and I'm very passionate about self-hosting. So it's unfortunate that the workshop about self-hosting kind of overlapped with this, which I had to miss, but that's fine. This is an updated version of a talk that I presented at UbuCon Asia in Jaipur last year. So if you've been there at that talk, you'll probably see a lot of similarities. Okay. Before we go into the essential features that I want to sell to the audience here, I want to quickly start by introducing Launchpad for those who don't know what Launchpad is. So you can call Launchpad to be a code hosting platform, maybe the platform for Ubuntu development, platform for hosting your PTAs, a bug tracker, mailing lists, translations, and what else. If you thought any of these things about Launchpad, you're right, but Launchpad is much more than this. So let's try and unpack what Launchpad is. Yeah. Launchpad had its first commit in 2004, and it was primarily developed as the development platform for Ubuntu, which means Launchpad is older than Ubuntu because the first release of Ubuntu was built on Launchpad, and Launchpad made it possible. It has over 150,000 commits and counting, and over 200 contributors. Even though Canonical is the primary owner and the sponsor for Launchpad, there have also been community contribution. So Launchpad initially was not an open source project, but around 2009, Launchpad was fully open source, and it is still an open source project. To understand the impact or the key role that Launchpad has played over time, you have to keep in mind that in 2004, there was no Git, there was no Bazaar, there was no modern web-based code review workflows. There were no major bug trackers. I think Bugzilla existed in some form at the time, if I remember correctly. But yeah, in the open source ecosystem, none of these things existed, which means that Launchpad had to go and invent and pioneer some of these. Yeah, over the past 21 years, Launchpad has gained a lot of features. For example, we have code hosting with Git repositories. We support mailing lists, which are going away, by the way. We support workflows to allow you to do code reviews. We have what we call merge proposal, which is the precursor to GitHub's pull requests and merge requests and all the other terminology that came later. Launchpad allows you to host your own distributions on Launchpad, like Ubuntu. Even though Ubuntu is the primary distribution on Launchpad, Launchpad does allow you, the Launchpad model does allow you to host your own distributions. It's going to be a lot of work because distribution is an aggregation of multiple pieces put together to have a working computer, but in general, it allows you to do that. Snaps are the distribution agnostic packaging format in Ubuntu, and you can actually write and develop and build snaps on Launchpad. Let's quickly check. You can also translate your open source applications, even if they are not hosted on Launchpad. On Launchpad, there are integrations and ways to make use of that. Ubuntu uses that heavily. You can also host your own Debian-based repositories on Launchpad, which is what we call PPAs, where DPA is personal package archive. Even though this started as a way for people to have their own namespace, the archives, this is also a place where a lot of the Ubuntu development happens. For example, if there is an Ubuntu core developer who wants to work on something and they want to stage it and test it somewhere, PTAs are also often used heavily. Launchpad also has an API, web service API. You might be wondering, hey, why web service API, not a REST API? You still need to remember that Launchpad was built in 2004. So we didn't have all the REST paradigms and ways of doing things at that time. Web service APIs, SOAP-based, XML RPC-based APIs were the state of art at that time. So you have that. If you want to use the Launchpad API to automate, we do have an officially supported Launchpad library, Python library called Launchpad lib. Launchpad also has a built-in CI functionality. I have to admit, though, in this case, that it lags a lot behind some of the modern ways to do CI, like the GitHub Actions, the GitLab-based ones, the Pojeo ones. But if you need some minimal CI implementation in Launchpad, you can use what we call Launchpad CI, which is powered by the tool called libpci. Launchpad also has a bug tracker. In case you didn't know, it has a question and answer portal. Again, this was a Stack Overflow before Stack Overflow existed. When Launchpad came out in 2006, it looked like this, which is pretty typical for a web application in 2006. And then in 2012, there was a fresh code of paid apply to Launchpad in terms of modernizing the UI and UX of Launchpad. But then it still doesn't look very modern. Last year, we did another round of revamp in terms of the Launchpad UI, where it started to look more and more modern, but it still looks like an application from 2010s. Yeah. So as a part of modernizing Launchpad, we've been working on a bunch of projects in parallel. The most recent one is the new code review UI. So this is the first step that we've taken as a part of improving Launchpad. So you can actually see that this is a lot more modern. I don't have a screenshot of how the old code review interface looks like, but if you're interested to check that out, you can actually take a merge proposal URL on Launchpad. Just replace code.launchpad.net with edge.launchpad.net and you get a modern UI. And please try it out and provide feedback. We are looking for feedback from the users, the community, and keen on addressing some of your pain points and requirements. Okay. So coming back to the topic of this talk, which is like 6 features that you may not have known about Launchpad and why you should consider them. The first thing is bug tracker federation. So Launchpad was again developed in 2004, where it wanted to be the hub of open source development, which means it needed ways to integrate with applications not from Launchpad itself, which means it needed a way to track things outside of Launchpad in Launchpad so that you can use Launchpad as a single place. And one of the features that we implemented for this was the bug tracker federation. The way this works is your application might be on GitHub, your application might be on GitLab, your application might be on some Bugzilla. Launchpad still has a way to integrate and track and keep you updated on all the activities on the external systems. Launchpad was primarily developed to aggregate distributions of software, no matter where they are, and have a single pane of glass view kind of thing where you can actually see everything about the open source ecosystem related to your application on Launchpad. Here is an example. I know the image is not very large in size, but what you can see here is that this is a bug on Launchpad where it tracks the bug in the 0MQ package in SUSE, Debian, and Ubuntu. Again, this is a very made-up, contrived example where we are picking distributions like Debian and SUSE who are not using Launchpad. But if you go to Launchpad, you'll actually see a lot more examples of this. For example, if say there is a 0MQ package in Ubuntu, which has a bug that you want to track, and there's a 0MQ upstream on GitHub, there are bugs like this where you can actually track the bug status in the upstream, where it says, okay, this is a link to dev bugs, Debian bug, Autobugzilla, Ubuntu bug, and so on. So you can see examples like this on the Launchpad bug tracker. In addition to tracking the status of the bugs, we can also see the conversations on those external systems happening on Launchpad. So for example, the maintainer of the package on OpenSUSE has posted a comment on their bug tracker, but Launchpad automatically syncs using a mechanism that we call as a bug watch. So you can see that somebody posted something on the OpenSUSE bug tracker, but Launchpad still knows what that is and then keeps track of that, so that just on the Launchpad bug, you can actually track all the conversations happening on various external bug trackers. So if you want to know a little bit more about the bug watches feature, you can probably scan this QR code and you'll find the link to a Launchpad documentation page about this. Recently, we moved our documentation system from a wiki-based thing to a read-the-docs-based thing. So you'll see a scary warning on top of a lot of fields saying, hey, we still need to verify that all the content is here is okay. But for this specific case, I think the documentation is recently updated, so we can go and check that out. The next thing is the Launchpad build farm. So we talked about what Launchpad is and what Launchpad is not in some of the slides before. One of the most powerful features that Launchpad provides to the open source communities and ecosystem is the build farms. Like, take a look at that. So Launchpad provides a large number of builders available to the open source community. People working on Ubuntu, people wanting to build their own open source projects on Launchpad. This is 750 builders and growing. Again, the numbers might have grown since the last update in the slide. We support 9 architectures as of today. So, for example, we support the regular AMD64 architecture. Recently, as a part of the Ubuntu 25.10 release, we also support a variant which now supports the V3 baseline for AMD64 architecture. We support building artifacts on ARM64 architecture, the RISC-V architecture, and a bunch of more architectures. So, if you want to know more details about the support architectures, the state of the Launchpad build farm in terms of the quantity, you can definitely go and check this page, launchpad.net/builders. We run thousands of builds every day, maybe even tens of thousands of builds every day. These include artifacts for the PPAs, for Ubuntu Archive itself, snaps, charms, rocks. Yeah, all the other on all the various architectures that Launchpad supports, and you can start using this build farm. It is provided as a benefit, free of cost benefit for the community to use, and you can definitely try using it. Yeah, I think this covers a lot of those things that I already spoke about. So AMD64 V3 is a new variant, which Ubuntu 25.10 and all the releases after that will support. RISC-V builds will also support on Launchpad, but those required an admin approval of some sort, where you need to be an Ubuntu core developer or someone who works for Canonical to access those. But as of end of 2023, it has also become self-service, which means if you have an application that you need to build on any of the architectures, you can definitely do that. Like with most applications or most services like Launchpad, these build farm integrations work best if your application is hosted on Launchpad. But even if it's not, in most cases, you can still build on Launchpad. So, for example, we have sources hosted on Launchpad for all of Ubuntu. But if you have some applications hosted on GitHub that you want to pull in and build on Launchpad, you can do that. Here is a way that you can actually force sources outside of Launchpad but still build on Launchpad. So if you have the sources for a snap or a charm hosted on GitHub, for example, or hosted on your local computer where you're developing it and you want to iterate and get feedback, but your laptop only runs one architecture, maybe it's an ARM64 laptop running macOS or an Asahi Linux, or if it's an Ubuntu system running AMD64 and you want to try and build it on all the other architectures that you want to distribute your app on. So you can use a remote build command that some of these tools support, and it will use the Launchpad build farm to like build those artifacts and build the result. Okay. The next thing that I want to quickly talk about is recipes. So recipes is just a way to level up how you build your application. So for example, you might want to have a use case. You might have a use case where you say, hey, I have a source on some repository, and whenever that changes, I want to automatically build. A lot of modern code hosting platforms like GitHub provide a way to do that. So Launchpad also has its own. This has been there for a long time, and the way we support that is using the recipe feature on Launchpad. Here are some of the artifacts that you can actually automate in this way. So you can actually build your Debian source packages automatically and publish them. You can build your snaps, you can build your charms, you can build your rocks. For those who don't know what rocks are basically an opinionated OCI or Docker compatible image that the Ubuntu ecosystem and Canonical try to provide. So we are also looking to add support for more types of artifacts. Here is an example of what a recipe looks like on Launchpad. So this is a snap recipe for an application called LPCI. You can actually configure it to point to source on Launchpad. So in this case, you can see that the source is on Launchpad, but that's not a hard deployment. You can also go have your source on an external system like GitHub and then configure the recipe to build it. Once the snap is built, you can also configure it to automatically build and upload to the store, which is where we distribute applications for all Ubuntu installations. This shows the form that you can use to create a snap recipe. For example, this is a snap that I tried to create under my own namespace. We can actually fetch it from a WhatsApp branch on Launchpad or a Git repository on Launchpad or external, and then you can configure various parameters, and then you can also choose what architectures that you can build on. So, for example, this snap has been configured to build just the AMD64 and the x86 architectures, but there are more architectures that you can select. There is also the option where once your snap is built, you can actually select it, select this checkbox where it will get uploaded to the store. You will need to authenticate your recipe to upload to store. So there's a flow for that, and then once it is done, you can actually have your source change. The recipe will automatically kick off builds, and then once it is sent, it will be uploaded to store. In some cases, like source packages in PPAs in Ubuntu, you can also have recipes which try and automatically build and publish. So the flow for the Debian and the Ubuntu packaging ecosystem is slightly different. So Launchpad provides the publisher mechanism, which takes your source packages and it publishes them, and then it takes the corresponding binary packages that are built and then publishes them. So the flows for that are going to be slightly different, where Launchpad is the source of truth. So you don't have to go and authenticate to an external system to do that. And in addition to the automated build and upload and publish and so on, you can also use these recipes to trigger builds manually when you require them. So if you want to create a snap recipe, you go to a page like this, where you need to substitute your project with the name of your project. Or if you want to have your own personal snap instead of the project, you can use your username. Similarly, for the charm recipe and the rib packages, these can follow the URL patterns here to create your own. So the fourth one that I want to talk about is the archive snapshot service. This is primarily a value add that we've been building and providing for the users of Ubuntu. What it does is it provides a point-in-time snapshot for the whole Ubuntu archive. So for example, today is 15th of November, 2025. Let's say you want to take a look at the Ubuntu archive as it was on 1st of January 2025 for some reason. So the snapshot service allows you to go back in time and then get the point-in-time state of the Ubuntu archive. In addition to the Ubuntu archive, we also provide the feature for the Ubuntu PPAs. The public and private PPAs also support this. We have plans to add support for more artifacts and architects. So this is powered by Launchpad, which is why I'm talking about it. Launchpad is a source of truth in terms of, hey, this is a source package in Ubuntu. These are the contents. This was built on this day, on this build farm, and then Launchpad takes care of publishing this. So we make use of the knowledge that Launchpad already has about the state of these archives to give you a snapshot of content and snapshot. For this, we've built a small web service application called LP Archive, which sits on top of Launchpad and then provides you a snapshot view of the archive. You might be wondering, hey, where is this useful? For example, it could be used for reproducible deployments. So if you want to build against a fixed target, freezing the archive at a given timestamp could be pretty helpful. Let's say you're a developer and you want to know when something changed, and then you can use the snapshot service to go back and do a bisect. You could also use this where you want to have a very structured way of updating a large number of systems. So let's say you have a fleet of applications running on Ubuntu, and you want to stay in control of when the underlying Ubuntu updates roll out. So you can say, hey, every month on the first of each month, I'm going to take the snapshot at that point, test it thoroughly with my application and make sure nothing breaks, and then I'll roll it out to all the VMs running the application. So this could be one use case. In fact, this project was built in collaboration with Microsoft for a use case very similar to what I explained now, in terms of having a structured workflow to upgrade your operating system. In case you want to try it out, so you can actually use this service by going to snapshot.ubuntu.com, where you have a nice documentation, so which explains how to use this. There is also a similar page for snapshots for the PPA service, which at the moment only has the same documentation as the Ubuntu snapshot service, which is not entirely easy to use. We are working on updating the documentation, but the way this works is pretty automatic. So you go to that page, follow the instructions there, and then once you do that, we can actually use apt. Apt has built-in support to look at snapshot, where you can say, hey, apt, install the version of package, let's say Emacs from 2025, 1st of June. You can say apt install and then pass the parameter to give the snapshot, timestamp, and it will install as it was on that date. In case you're interested in knowing the technical details of this, my former colleague Colin Watson gave a talk at Ubuntu Summit 2023. So this is a direct link to the video, starting from the part where this presentation starts. It's a pretty interesting talk in terms of how this was implemented as a layer on top of Launchpad without having to do a lot of additional work. The first thing that I want to quickly talk about is Launchpad CI. So this is something that Launchpad has lagged behind a lot of the contemporary alternatives. So for example, GitHub provides GitHub Actions, GitLab provides its own CI, Code.io provides its own CI, and so on. A few years ago, we tried to have some CI functionality in Launchpad, as a part of which we implemented Launchpad CI. This is actually provided by a runner tool called LPCI. So this is an open source project as well. All the jobs that you want to run as a part of your CI workflow runs on the Launchpad builders, the same builders that I talked about in one of the previous topics as a part of the Launchpad build farm. This is generally available, but it is still pretty minimal and limited in terms of the features. It's still in active development, but since it's an open source project, if you're interested in contributing features or filing bug reports or providing feedback, please do so. Like with most CI runners, Launchpad has its own format, YAML-based format, in terms of how to define your CI job, and it's just an example. This integrates nicely with your Launchpad code review, where once you push a commit to Launchpad, it actually runs with these jobs, defining your pipeline for Launchpad CI, and then it shows the status, it has a link to the build outs, and so on. So this integrates well with the way Launchpad works already. Yeah, this is a pretty extensible application. For example, it already has plugins for Conda, Miniconda, PyProject, Tox, and Go. If you want to see support for some of the other build types that you are interested in, other language ecosystems, this could be the place to go to. The lpca.read.io contains the documentation for this, and the source for this is on Launchpad. The last secret that I want to let you in on is the Launchpad API. Even though the Launchpad web application is pretty powerful, Launchpad API allows you to level up further. So this is a Vec Service API, not a REST API. So I've already explained why that is, because when Launchpad API was implemented, REST didn't even exist. So we used whatever was the state of art right Japan. You can actually go to api.launchpad.net and then read the API documentation in terms of what entities are available, what operations you can perform. And you'll often see that some of the operations that the Launchpad web interface exposes, you can do that. But often you'll also find ways to do some operations that are not exposed in your interface. So interested, please go take a look at the API documentation. We also provide a first-party library. So if you're a Python developer and you want to have a Pythonic way of interacting with the Launchpad API, so Launchpad did this API. This is packaged in Ubuntu, and you can definitely install it from your archive, or if you want to directly install it from PyPI and integrate in the project, it's also available on PyPI. There is also a nice tool called LP Shell, which provides an IPython-based playground for the API in case you want to play around with this. So this is a part of the LP Tools project in the Ubuntu archive. So if you are interested, you can install LP Tools and then can launch the LP Shell command, and then you can have an interactive playground where you can try things with the Launchpad editor. Here are some examples of things that you could do with the Launchpad API. This is not exhaustive at all, but for example, you can say, hey, I want to get the reference of a user called CJ Watson, and then I want to print that person's display name on Launchpad. So this is my former colleague whose username is CJ Watson and his name is Colin Watt. Similar to that, for example, a more advanced operation would be to search all the questions submitted by a given user, and then we want to sort by newest pass and get the most recent questions submitted by the user. So this actually gives all the questions submitted by the user in a wgrand and prints all the titles of the questions. You can also create get repositories uses the Launchpad API. So here an example, I don't know if the code is readable, but this basically uses the API to create a repository called Launchpad with demo, where the owner is my guarantee user and the repository is going to be under my own personal namespace. And once that is done, you can actually go and change the name of the repository. You can actually delete the repository. You can do a lot of those CRUD operations like it's supported by most of the APIs. If you want to read more about the Launchpad API, you can find an example. We can find the documentation for this. This is the same as the api.launchpad.net URL in the previous slide. You can also find some examples of how to use the Launchpad API on this URL. Yeah, so I just want to quickly add a few extras because I wanted to highlight 3 things that have changed since my talk in UbuCon Asia, which is why I'll, instead of updating the slide to the presentation to say 9 new things, I let it to be 6 and then add 3 more things. So recently, a few weeks ago, we added support to use 5.2 SSH keys. So if you have a security key like a YubiKey or any other compatible implementation, you can use those to authenticate actions with Launchpad Git. So if you want to push your repositories to Launchpad Git, you can use those 5.2 SSH keys to authenticate. If you are someone who uses Launchpad to upload packages to your PPA or to Ubuntu, you can again use the 5.2 SSH keys with SFTP uploads. Bazaar was a version control system that Canonical and Launchpad developed for a long time. In fact, Bazaar predates Git by a few months, but the whole ecosystem has converged on Git, which means we will be looking to shut down Bazaar posting in Launchpad and just use Git as the de facto code hosting implementation. Launchpad also provided mailing lists for a very long time, built on top of the No Mailman project, and it will be shut down in the coming weeks. So if you have anything on Launchpad that requires that, you will have to migrate off. We also have a feature to provide templates, where if you have a project or a distribution or some entity on Launchpad which supports bug reports, you can actually pre-create templates like you would on a GitHub project. I also want to quickly let you know that we are hiring for engineering manager roles and software engineer roles. The software engineering roles also are at various levels. Even though it says software engineer, it starts from the entry level till senior staff, expert levels. So if you're interested, please scan these and save these. It has links to the Canonical career portal. With that, I'm done. Any questions or feedback about Launchpad? I will be here at the event for 2 days. So if you even see me roaming around in the corridors, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about Launchpad. Thank you.